Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Untrivial Podcast. My name is Allie Nelson. I am in Florida this week, so I am out getting some sun. I hope you guys are enjoying spring that is coming. I hope that once I get back, it is just going to be hot and beautiful, and we are going to be ready for a summer in Toronto. My guest today is Raquel Benitah. She is a body image and lifestyle content creator, as well as a holistic nutritionist. She's well known for her message of self love and compassion and advocating for individuals to have a healthy relationship with food and movement in a world that can make it very hard to do so. I want to give a trigger warning for this episode because we do get into the topic of eating disorders today. So if that's not something you're open to at this time, feel free to jump back in next week. Today, we discuss Raquel's journey with content creation, her relationship to food and exercise growing up, how we can be kinder to ourselves when we are bombarded with images of the ideal beauty standard constantly, and so much more. If you enjoy this episode, please feel free to give us a follow, a 5-star review, or share with a friend. It really helps me grow the show. And with that, let's get into the episode. Raquel Benitah, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I know that you are a big influencer on TikTok and Instagram, but for those who don't know you, maybe you could share just a little bit about your background as a nutritionist and a model.
Yes, of course. Hi, I'm Raquel. I am a 25-year-old content creator and holistic nutritionist. I live in Toronto, and hopefully part-time LA. I'm slowly manifesting that into my life.
Mm-hmm.
I have been creating content for about 6.5 years on social. And it first started out when I was in university. My friend and I started it together actually. And it was just more of like a fun fitness student account. And then during COVID, or before COVID, I took it over. And then during COVID, I sort of took it up a notch and switched it to be more authentic to me. I felt like, as a lot of us feel, social media can be very surface level and romanticized and very curated, and to me, I don't live a curated life. I just live my life. So I thought I could bring that aspect of me to my account, and so I switched it to body image focus. And then I was also in eating disorder recovery, so I thought that could be a really good thing to harp on, as well as therapy. And I brought all these topics that people don't normally talk about, or didn't talk about back then. I feel like now we all do. And I sort of just let that drive my content, and that's how I kind of grew my community. And then also during COVID, I became a holistic nutritionist, which just felt fitting because I love health and wellness. And I just want to, see a lot of good changes in the right direction in this industry, in terms of just us feeling good rather than doing it for the aesthetic. So yes, that's me.
What did your content start as? Like when you were doing it with your friend?
Yeah. So it started off as, we were kind of taking on this image of two girls in university who are trying to study and have a social life while also fitting in fitness and nutrition. Sadly, looking back, I was struggling with an eating disorder, and she was sort of also kind of struggling. So when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I actually said those things, don't eat carbs, or work out twice a day. But you know what? You live and you learn. And that's just the beauty of life, is you can look back and see change, and see that you've, become better. Sort of started off like that. And we did studio reviews because we loved going to different fitness studios. It was really fun. It wasn't only about disordered eating. I'm making it seem like that, but it was very fun and educational and very community based. And then we just went our separate ways, and it worked out for the
Yeah.
better.
I think that's so relatable though. Like I think everyone who's in school is and even in work, they're all trying to balance all the things. It's like, oh, I need a social life and I need a partner and I need to work out and I need to do this. I got to see family, and it's hard to juggle so many things and feel like you're keeping up in all these different facets of life. Totally get that.
Yeah. And I feel like in university, it's your first time, or college or wherever, it's like the first time in your life where a lot of people leave home, they move out, they have to balance like this whole new life in a different city sometimes. Plus, like what you said, like we both had boyfriends and we both were trying to work on our fitness and do well in school. And it's just like, how do 18-year-olds figure this out? And so we thought we could like shed light on that. Not that we were professionals, but we were trying to do it. So it was fun.
Definitely. How do you feel about body representation today or size inclusivity today?
I feel like we're definitely getting in a better direction than it used to be. Obviously, we all know we used to look at modeling agencies and runway shows and magazine covers and TVs and movies and or TV and movies. And it was just small, thin, white
Mm-hmm.
women. And it's tough to watch because that's what we're all used to. So that's just like what we've accepted. But when you look at a model or you're watching TV as a kid, this is what I always think about is like, I don't really care about my 25-year-old self or like my 50-year-old self because I can compartmentalize these things and am able to like look past body image. But like my 11-year-old Raquel self that would watch these women on TV and be like, wow, if only I could. And every night I would go to bed and be like, please God, like I'm not even religious. And I would be like, please God, I'll do anything if I could just wake up skinny. And like, it's so sad that a
Yeah.
kid has to say those things. And so back to your question, I think we're definitely making moves in the right direction, whether it's clothing, sizes, or just representation in all aspects. But obviously there's always room for improvement. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. We definitely grew up in the era of, Victoria's Secret fashion shows and like not People magazine, but like those like trashy kind of celeb magazines. And they would like rip on Britney Spears for being like a size 4. And it's like what we
Right.
thought and what we were taught was plus size is like absurd on its face, and just the only images we saw were just like skinny, 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 thin, thin, thin. That was like the only thing. Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I think we
Yeah.
went from like Victoria's Secret fashion show and now we've got like Fenty fashion show, and it's so much more inclusive, it's so much
Mhm.
different and fun. So yeah, I agree. I think we're heading in the right direction, but it was insane in the 2000s.
It was dark. We would watch like Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen and like Lindsay Lohan, and they were like, I remember Mary Kate and Ashley. I think they were anorexic, and that was like our image to look up
Mm-hmm.
to and our role models to be like, oh my gosh, they look amazing. And like what you said, like Britney Spears, the headlines were like, she's gone off the rails, she's
Yeah.
gained 5 pounds, and we're all like, yeah, she's gone off the rails. Like, what?
Yeah.
It is so crazy to me that that is like the stuff that we're focused on. And every magazine covers like Oprah loses 50 pounds on Weight Watchers. And then the next week it's like Oprah hates bread. Oprah loves bread. And it's like the most insane thing.
And then the wild part too was, you'd get fed all this information about how bad it was to be, a certain size. Then they would say the same thing about the anorexic models. It'd be like rail thin and then just crush them for going the opposite way. And it's like every woman was put in such a lose-lose situation. Like no matter what you look like, no matter what size you were, people were going to have something to say about it, and it was going to be negative.
100%. Yeah, you feel like it's never good enough. It's like you grow up in the media or like your grandparents are like, you need to be smaller, and then you get smaller and they're like, you're too small, you need to eat more.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, what? Like, what do you want from me? And your poor brain is being pulled in two different directions. And it's just like the hardest thing to even think about. And plus, like your hormones are going
Yeah.
crazy. It's just like the whole thing.
Yeah, it's sad how young it all starts and how early you start intaking that information. One brand that comes to mind that I will name, Brandy Melville. What are they
So
doing?
I don't even know. I feel like this has been talked about so much and like granted as it should be. I in Toronto where I live, I don't think we might have one Brandy Melville
Hmm.
left. In LA, I have walked by like 4 Brandy Melvilles since being here, and I'm just like, wow, these like 13-year-old girls are really keeping this place afloat
Yeah.
because I don't know anybody I mean, I do. I have smaller friends, but like I walk in there and the clothing is just, I don't know where your hips fit, like no shame, but it is crazy. All jokes aside, though, I think it is really sad to have a one size fits all title on something. Um, especially when it obviously does not fit all.
Yeah.
I think, like, for example, I used to hate that title. And then I found this bathing suit company, sidetracking for a second, called Use, which is like my favorite bathing suits. I have like 10 of them. I will support them till the day I die. And it's one size fits 7 sizes, but like it genuinely does. And they have models on the websites that it fits. And then you go to Brandy and you just feel so bad about yourself, but you also laugh because it's like, this is a
Yeah.
joke, right? Like this has to be a joke. Somebody at head office is doing something.
Yeah. For those who don't know, yeah, Brandy Melville, it's a one size fits all store, but that size would equate to an extra small in like regular
Yes.
clothing. And it's like
Yeah.
this brand built on like exclusivity, but it's size exclusivity. And the only people that can
Right.
shop there are like teeny tiny teenagers. And yeah, it's weird to me that a brand whose niche or differential in this day and age is
Hmm.
successful and surviving.
I know.
It's just wild to me that that's still happening.
I know. It's crazy. I feel like when it first started, there was like a big uproar from everyone. And then now I think we've all just like we've all just thrown it in the trash. It's like,
Yeah.
whatever. Are we really going to cry about it or are we going to shop elsewhere? Like there's so many amazing brands out there that are just, you can get a t-shirt in your
Mhm.
size.
Yeah, you really do kind of like make statements with your wallet and where you spend your money,
Yeah,
and that's good enough.
totally.
How has your
Mhm.
relationship with your body and your body image evolved over time?
It's definitely gotten better. I won't sit here and lie and say because I do what I do and because this is my job, it's like we are doing great. Um, it's gotten better. When I was a kid, I would say up until I was like in eating disorder recovery, my body image was every single morsel of time and every single cell in my brain and body were always focused on it. And it was just like never enough. And it was sad because I was like, I should be living this wonderful life. Well, now I think like that. Back then, I was just like, I wish I could be skinnier.
Mhm.
I would go to Aritzia and all these stores like Brandy Melville with my friends. And I would just like walk around and pretend to browse, even though I knew nothing would fit me. So, yeah, I had terrible body image and I always wished I would be smaller. And then when I lost weight, so this is like kind of I'll give a quick little story. So I was, I grew up in a larger body. And when I was 16, I had sort of like a really low point to my mom. And I cried to her and was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And it was like really sad. And I didn't know what to do about my body image. Like 16 years of constantly hating on yourself really does take a toll on your
Yeah.
mental health. And so she said, she's like the most supportive person in the world. I love her to death, both my parents. And she said, let's go to a nutritionist and try and figure out ways we can be healthy. Because I did Weight Watchers. I went to dietitians. Nothing works,
Mhm.
or nothing worked for. So I went to a nutritionist, and long story short, that was in my entire grade 12 year of high school. And I lost 60 pounds and it was
Wow.
great. And all the boys were looking at me and I wore the beautiful prom dress I wanted. And everything was great from the outside. And inside, I was restrictively eating. I was over exercising. And I knew I was going off to university in a few months. And I like was so excited because I could cook my own food and, have control over my life. Um, and so when I went to university in first year, it was just like an awful experience because I was dealing with it. I had orthorexia, which for those of you who don't know, it's sort of like an obsession with the food that you're eating, making sure all the ingredients are quote unquote clean. Um, and so I had that. And so yeah, it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. And obviously my body image wasn't great. 60 pounds lighter or 60 pounds heavier, I obviously was still obsessed with being smaller and smaller and smaller, and it was never enough until again I hit rock bottom and my mom saved me again and we went to therapy and then I started recovery. That's like the fast track version.
Mhm.
If you want to hear more, I have 5 parts on my on my reels on Instagram. But yeah, so that's why I say until I was in eating disorder recovery did my body image get better, when I realized that no matter what size you are, until you love yourself and until you accept who you are as a human being, regardless of the way your body looks, you will never be happy. And my mom, when I was younger, used to say to me, if you don't love yourself, then nobody can love you. And it really has always stuck with me because I never loved myself enough to realize that this was the thing that I needed to fix, was my own self-love. And through gaining weight back during recovery, I was able to take her words literally and sit myself down, whether it was in front of my therapist or by myself in my room, bawling my eyes out, and say, this will never work. You will never be happy in life, no matter what size you are, if you don't find that self-love. So that's sort of when everything clicked and the puzzle pieces came together. And I started to embrace my body and realize that change is okay. I'm allowed to want to change, but at the state that I'm in and the life that I'm living and the body I'm in, I need to start showing it some love. So ever since that day, my body image has gotten better. I go through waves, of course, and I still, have those old disordered thoughts that come up and then I have to deal with them. But for the most part, I would say I'm definitely really happy with where I'm at.
That's so great. I'm so happy to hear that you're happy. And I feel like your mom and RuPaul say the same thing. It's like, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love anybody else?
Totally. My mom points what you did,
I
but
love that.
yes.
Orthorexia, that's such a sneaky, I think, eating disorder, because if you're not close to that person from the outside, it just looks like they're really healthy and they're making healthy choices
Yes.
and they're doing all the right things. And it almost looks aspirational from the outside. But
Hmm.
the and you can't tell whether someone is, super just focused on their wellness or struggling with orthorexia unless you're really close to understanding the mentality
Totally.
behind it, which is so hard.
100%. I think orthorexia needs its own PR team, because the amount, and I say that obviously sarcastically, but the amount of people these days who are struggling with orthorexia that either don't know it or they just don't know how to get help because it's not anorexia or
Yeah.
bulimia. I feel like if you don't have one of those two, then your eating disorder is not taken seriously. And I saw it firsthand, where I would tell people or I would talk to people and try and explain, and they would be like, what is that? Like,
Mm,
I've literally never heard of that. You don't have an eating disorder. And I was like, okay, well, this is why we need education. But it's sad because, like you said, I love that you said it's like aspirational. Everybody would say to me, how are you eating so clean? How do you never have a cheat day?
mm,
How do you go to the gym every day? And I would say, oh, it's just, and I would act like it was just like my own willpower, but it was really the most disordered thing ever.
yeah.
So yeah, I never even heard of it before my therapist said, hey, I think you have orthorexia. And I was like, no, 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 no. There's no way, So yeah, this wellness industry is really creating a big orthorexic movement, and it's really sad to see, because now that I experienced it, I feel like I can watch someone and the way that they are, and I can sort of get the hint, but
Mhm.
it is hard to know.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just unfortunately that pendulum swinging a little bit too far. Like, there's so many great things about the
Mhm.
wellness movement, of course, like people looking after their bodies
Totally.
and making healthier choices is great, but when it moves into this space where, you're militant and you are freaking out if you don't have the cleanest food, or, you know, 8 hours of sleep every night, and you start losing control that way, then that's the flip side. And it's unfortunate, but you're
Yeah.
right, that there's definitely a rise in that. And you mentioned as well, people not taking it seriously. And I've also heard that even if you do have, either anorexia or bulimia, if you're not rail thin, people don't take it seriously either. They'll be like, what are you talking about? You look healthy, you're fine.
It's crazy. You need to show the physical signs. It's like signs versus symptoms, right? Like,
Mm,
the signs are physically versus the symptoms are what you as the human can feel. And so I had all of the symptoms, but I really didn't show many signs except for irritability and anxiety and constantly being sad. And obviously my mom, who's super close to me, was the one who was like, okay, it's time. But none of my friends really realized. They were like, wow, look at you. You only eat 10 almonds. That's willpower.
Mm,
And, oh, you don't want to come to McDonald's with us after the club? You don't want to come to the club in general? I'm like, no, I have to wake up for my workout at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And so it just really, it takes somebody to pull you out. But it also does take you sort of admitting not really defeat, but just like that you need help. And that's totally fine.
yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people that are just scared to say it out loud, or maybe they're
Yeah.
ashamed, but getting help is always
Mhm.
always the answer. You mentioned falling more in love with yourself and finding that self-love. How did you go about finding that and going through that journey? Was that through therapy? Was that kind of self-work, mixture? Tell us, how did you do that?
A mixture. I feel like it never just takes one modality. It's kind of like pulling all of the different resources and aspects of your life. I would say it started when I started to gain weight physically in recovery. That was like a low point because it's obviously hard after all these years of work and restricting and the quote unquote willpower and the exercising. I was like, all of my hard work is going to waste now because I need to recover. Ugh. And you don't really understand how important it is until you get to not the finish line, but like the middle of the marathon. There's never any finish line. So I realized that I didn't love myself enough to like continue on the way I was going. And so I was trying to just like look online for resources. How do people do eating disorder recovery and like feel happy? Like, when is that going to happen? Because it was like recovery, but I was sad. And I've seen all these videos on YouTube and TikTok. And I mean, it wasn't really TikTok back then, but like that really ages me. It was like YouTube or Instagram, and it was like, I'm in recovery and now I eat bread and I feel so happy. And I was like, when will I reach that point? So it was therapy for sure. I was consistent with therapy. I went once a week, every week for like a year. And it was honesty. I had to be honest. I think a lot of people use therapy as a crutch, but they lie to their therapist so it doesn't work.
Mm,
I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pour my heart into you. I'm going to cry during our session. I'm just going to get out of this. I'm paying a lot of money for this, so I might as well use it. So my therapist helped me a lot, and just gave me different like tips and tricks in moments of, when you're out for dinner, do this, or when whatever she gave me. Um, and what else helped me? I mean, just like constantly reassuring myself that it was going to be okay. Obviously, having an online community helps a lot because I, if you follow me or you don't, you could look at my page. I really have the mindset of like, I don't care. So I will post a video in my underwear and bra. I will post a video of like me being silly. I just like love my community and I feel like they're my family. So I would just like show up on stories and be honest, and I would cry. I remember one time so vividly, I was cleaning out my closet after I had gained weight back and like none of my jeans fit me and I was crying, and I was just like, I'm showing you guys this because I feel like other people have gone through this and it's really shitty, but I know it'll be worth it in the end. And the amount of love and messages I got, just that helped me a lot. So whether you have a platform or not, if you're going through this, reach out to people like your friends and your family because they get it more than you think,
mm-hmm.
right? Like we all struggle with body image.
Yeah.
Everybody has done something in their life where they've regretted the food that they've eaten or not. And I'm not saying that's disordered eating, but food and body image are two things that we can all as human beings connect over. So if you're looking for that community and you're looking for that support, trust me, people will help you and be there for you. And then one last thing that I did, which I don't know if everybody's into, but I am very into mushrooms.
Mm.
Um, are we allowed to
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
mushrooms on here? So I'm into all mushrooms, like, portobello mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, like lion's mane.
Portobello mushrooms.
But also I'm really into
Mm.
psilocybin, which is the psychedelic mushroom. I think it is super healing if it's used as plant medicine rather than recreationally. And so I have done a few different like plant medicine journeys or ceremonies, if you will. And I've talked about those on my page as well. But those really helped just like heal my inner child, and sort of like just give me insight into like, am I doing everything right? Am I on the right path? Um, it's like a very complex thing, these ceremonies, but they helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of is like therapy fast tracked because it just like strips you of your ego. So you have to sort of just like give in. And it's amazing. So that's sort of how I did it.
Very cool. You mentioned so many things. I want
Yeah.
to backtrack a little bit. Um, no, I want to double click on all of them. So you mentioned that your therapist might give you tips and tricks if you're out for dinner or something. Like, can you share maybe a few tips or tricks if someone's struggling with orthorexia or something similar?
Yeah, for sure. So she would say we would like kind of come up with things together, or even if it wasn't her, it was like there's some dietitians out there who practice in like more of the disordered eating space. And so I love following them. And they would say, like, if you're out for dinner and you feel overwhelmed, like look at the menu and take a breath, take a deep breath. You don't need to like make it a whole scene in front of whoever you're out with, because I know that could be a lot. But just like, take a deep breath. It's just food. Remember, food is for fuel for your body. And you sort of have to like break it down like that. I remember one thing my therapist said to me. I came into her office crying one day because I had a bite of cake and I was so scared of the cake. And she was like, Raquel, let's break down what cake is. It is flour, which is carbs, which is energy. It is sugar, which is carbs, which is energy. And then it's some other random things like salt and whatever. And I was like, you're right, but I don't know why I'm scared. So breaking food down also, even now, even me right now, 2023 Raquel still does that. Like I will be so worked up about something and then I'll be like, it's fine. Like it's literally a piece of pizza. It's carbs. Your body will use that. It's dairy. Your body will like, you know what I mean? It helps sometimes versus, oh my God, I ate this and I screwed up and I regret it. And now I need to burn it off.
Yeah,
Like take a step back. That always helps so
I
much.
love that because I totally agree. I think there's this weird like morality and like good and bad associated with foods. And it's like these are bad
Mhm.
foods and these are good foods. But you're right, like they're all macros. They're all just
Yeah,
different things, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up. Like obviously, eating McDonald's every single day of your life, it's not going to fuel you and give you all the vitamins and nutrients and, things that you need for your body to be running optimally. But if you have it once in a while, you're not going to die. Like it's fine.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Mhm.
So those were some of the tips and tricks. And then as I slowly like became a nutritionist and wanted to sort of work in this space as well, seeing clients, I would use some of my experience from my own life and like help my clients out. So one of my favorite tips, if you struggle with binge eating or you struggle with like late night snacking and you just can't find the quote unquote willpower and your body just sucks, like we hate ourselves so much for doing these things. It's like whatever that trigger is, whether it's that pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream or that bag of Doritos, you got to keep it in your house. It's reverse psychology because obviously the more you keep it in your house, the more you think you're going to eat it. But if you think about when you were a kid, whatever you had in your cupboard at home was not special. It was when you went to your friend's house or you went to the convenience store that those things were special because you never had access to them. So you
Mm.
kind of need to teach your inner child. This is my favorite thing, reparenting. You need to reparent your inner child to be allowed those things. So if you keep chocolate in your house, then chocolate's no longer special. But it's like the food that you walk by in the grocery store that you avoid, that you're like, oh no, I would eat the whole pint. It's because you don't allow yourself. So that's my favorite
That's so
tip.
interesting. I've never thought about that. I definitely like when I was, trying to be super healthy, I would like only buy healthy foods. And then yeah, you'd you'd like just crave chocolate and be like, I don't have any.
Totally.
And sometimes, yeah, you would go to bed without it. And then other times you'd be like, screw it. And then you'd walk outside and go to a convenience store and buy the chocolate bar anyway, or buy two at that point. So I think that's
Yeah.
such an interesting take. I've never heard that. But you're right. It makes sense when you say it out loud. Interesting.
Yeah, right? It's all about, like, saying it out loud. That's also another tip now, it's all coming up. Like, when I'm driving, sometimes I will just turn the radio off or, like, unplug my my phone and just like vent to myself as if it's like therapy. And it's such a good feeling. That's just therapy
Yeah.
tip, not disordered eating. But yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
things. Stand in front of the mirror, talk to yourself, all the good
Yeah.
stuff.
You mentioned too, connecting with others and you have a community online. I think we almost forget that we all grew up in the same generation. And I bet you like a majority of women have the same struggles or did at one point. And it's like, I remember I was with a group of my friends and we were talking about high school. It's like, remember when we just like all had like an element of an eating disorder? And it was like, oh yeah, because it was so normal to like hate yourself in high school or look at all
Mhm.
those magazines and like get excited to watch the Victoria's Secret fashion show. And that would be like your motivation for like a year of working out.
Yep.
And it's like, you forget we were all there. It happened to all of us. If you can talk to someone, you can talk to a girlfriend who was probably going through
Oh
it.
yeah.
It's
Remember like when thigh gap was all
oh
the
yeah.
rage? Like we all grew up in that
It was thigh gap,
generation.
and
We
then it was
can't forget
like
it.
that line in the middle of your stomach, like that ab line, that was like another level. There's so many weird trends, and it's so bizarre that women's bodies are trends.
I know. It's so sad. There was like a trend, I don't know what it was like last year or something that like heroin chic was
Mm,
back because
because everyone
like,
was on
oh my
Ozempic.
gosh. Right. And now Ozempic is all the rage. It's never ending. And I feel like until you get a grasp, which goes back to loving yourself, until you love yourself, you won't be able to get out of these trends and these fads. And you'll always feel like you're keeping up with the Joneses, which is impossible if we've learned anything. And so you need to just, do you and go to the gym and feel good and eat the food that makes you feel good and find a lifestyle that's sustainable for the rest of your life. I think we forget that longevity is the point of this life. We have this one body forever, and pumping it full of medications or starving it or over exercising and treating it like crap is not the answer. So being 10 or 20 pounds heavier, but being happy with low cortisol and feeling good is what's important. And I think that's lost.
Yeah, totally. I was talking to a naturopath the other day, and she was talking about how she sees lots of women who might not be eating enough. And one of the most like underrated things she's like telling her clients is you only have until you're like 35 to build your bone density, and then you're just trying not to lose it. And it's like there's so many things related to our body's just ability to propel us forward and to keep us healthy for the rest of our lives that like we're too focused on being a size 2 to remember like, oh my gosh, I need to be in this body for like 50 more years and I need to make sure I'm healthy for a good chunk of that. And you're going to
Yeah,
lose out on that if you're low in iron, if you're not eating enough, if you're, not working out enough and things like that.
100%. Yeah, it's until you kind of like till something happens that's when you kind of realize like whether, as you get older you break a bone, it's harder for it to recover or you lack mobility and you pull out your back or whatever it is, like your hormones start going crazy or your period is irregular. It's not till something happens that we then, create change. But I don't know.
Mhm.
It is a sad society that like all these things are glorified.
Mhm. How do you deal with the waves? You said you kind of go back and forth, which is so normal. No one can feel amazing about themselves 100% of the time. That's insane. But how do you manage kind of being gentle with yourself when a wave of like, oh, you know what? I'm feeling really crappy today when that comes up?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like taking a step back and acting like you're your own friend and reminding yourself that it is just a wave. Like sitting here talking to you right now, talking about these waves in 2 weeks when my period's coming and I'm feeling lower than low, or when I try on a pair of jeans and they just don't fit like they used to fit, or I look in the mirror and I have a double chin, I need to remember that it's just a wave, right? Because then 3 days later, I feel totally fine again and I'm back to me. So it is important to remember it's a wave. It's important to remember that it's part of being a human is ebbing and flowing, whether that's with your physical health, your mental health, the way we work, the way we interact with people. Like nothing is ever constant. And if it was, life would be boring. And so I just think you need to give yourself grace and be gentle And you need to know when in life is time to push hard and reach for goals, and when it's time to sort of ease up and let yourself just be. So that's sort of how I do it. I'm just like, well, this happens to me every few months. I know, like I have like a 3 or 4 month increment where I'll like go to my mom and be like, Mom, I don't feel so good about my body. And then she's like, okay, let's talk about it. And then I'm like so good for 4 or 5 months. And then again, I'll like go to my trainer and be like, oh, I don't feel so good about my body. And he'll be like, you do this every like 5 months. And I'm like, I know, I have to
That's still like
spend.
pretty decent. That's like only twice a year. That's great. I feel like I was just curious. Do you do activities and workouts that are like cycle synced? And for those who don't know, it's like when you're, in your most energetic phase, in your follicular phase of your period cycle, high intensity might be better. And then when you're approaching your luteal phase and your bleed phase, doing things that are a little bit low intensity, a bit slower, a bit more gentle for your body, that would be like cycle syncing. So doing exercises that kind of map to your energy levels over the course of the month. Do you do that?
I don't, which I'm slowly realizing that I should. I've always had a very regular period with no symptoms. Like I've had like
Lucky.
minimal or like maybe a few cravings, and very lucky. And then when I had orthorexia, I lost my period for a year, and that sort of was what kicked my ass into gear. I was like, well, women should get a period. So something's obviously wrong with my body right now. And so ever since then, it came back. All was good. I don't know what's happened recently, but I get my period and my lower back kind of hurts a bit more, and I'm a bit more tired. And so I'm slowly learning to honor my body versus pushing through and going to my CrossFit class. So yes, I am definitely, I wouldn't say I like cycle. What did you call it? Cycle
Cycle
sync?
syncing. Yeah.
Cycle syncing. I don't do it, but I should, because I know it does feel good when I take a day off when I'm on my period, or I just work on stretching or do like a Pilates class. I'm trying to get into Pilates. I'm not a Pilates girl. So I'm very into like weightlifting and high intensity workouts. But yeah, it doesn't really work for me when I'm on day 2 of my period and I feel like just low, and just like tired. Do you do it?
I try to. I feel like every time because I'm also pretty regular, it's like if I'm coming up, I just know that there's no hope of doing anything more intense than like a walk or like yin yoga, like slow yoga. So, yeah. Um, cool. How has your relationship with food changed since becoming a nutritionist? Because I feel like you have so much more education and awareness about food as well, just with that being your profession now.
Totally. So I was a bit nervous going into nutrition, and so was my therapist. She actually said to me, I don't know if this is the best idea for you as somebody who has struggled with food and body image, to make that your entire career and talk about people's weight loss all day
Mm.
long is a bit of an oxymoron. And I agreed, but I obviously went against her wishes and went to nutrition school. I went to holistic nutrition school because it is different than going into dietetics or nutrition, because it focuses more on like an entire body experience. It's obviously holistic, I was gonna say. And I just like the way that we learn things. Um, it definitely has taught me a lot about nutrition in general. It's taught me a lot about the way that I talk and think about food. And I've definitely taken some things with a grain of salt. If you go to nutrition school, your teachers are going to be a handful of different people from all walks of life, any school that you go to. And so some of them would say a lot of disordered stuff. And I was in recovery during my school experience. So I had to sort of block out some things they would say. And it was a great, challenging learning experience for me. And then once I graduated and I went into the field, and I worked at a clinic and I saw clients all day on the basis of weight loss, I would need to catch myself from like saying things that I knew would be triggering for people, because weight loss is weight loss and there are so many ways to do it, but you can't just sit around eating bags of chips expecting to lose weight. And I felt like I was in recovery trying to say yes to every food item that I wanted to eat, but I was like saying something different to my clients, and it just felt it felt hard to manage. So I took a break from seeing clients, and I see clients, or sorry, I took a break from weight loss clients, and now I see clients for like body image and food freedom, which is the best thing ever. But yeah, being a nutritionist, it's amazing and I love it. And I'm so glad to have that background and knowledge. But part of me is like, sometimes I don't want to talk about food and focus on food all day. And I wonder if I worked like a 9 to 5 finance desk job, would I struggle so much with food? But I love it. And so I think it was written in the stars in my path for me to do it.
Yeah. And I think too, if you're, especially if you're seeing clients who are in recovery or trying to love themselves more, like it'd be hard to walk away from that day being like, I didn't do great work today. You know, like you're helping people daily, which is so
Totally.
great. And maybe you wouldn't derive as much satisfaction out of a finance desk job, but maybe, who knows? No shade to finance people.
No, of course. They work hard, but I couldn't do that. But also something that I noticed with weight loss nutrition was everybody had an underlying something, right? Like everybody brought in something to my desk every day that I would speak to them, whether it was something from work, and they would use food as sort of like a coping mechanism, or something with their spouse, or something with their inner child. And so I would bring that out of them, and sort of like make it an all-encompassing holistic approach, and make it aware, or make them aware that this wasn't just stemming from wanting to lose weight. It was stemming from all these other things that a lot of the time we forget, right? We don't
Mm,
just want to lose an X number, or we don't just like go into something so open-minded. There's always going to be a backstory to
yeah.
it. Whether that's like you striving for something that you missed as a kid, or whatever it be. So I was able to sort of use my my witchy therapy spidey recovery senses with them, and I love
Yeah.
that.
What are some practices or ways of thinking um, that we could approach food with a bit more kindness to ourselves? So I know you mentioned kind of like keeping things that you want or you don't want to feel special, keeping them in the house. Are there any other practices that you would recommend?
Yes, I actually recently just saw someone on TikTok. I forget her name, and I don't want to steal her idea, so I am giving somebody on TikTok credit for this, but I just didn't get her name. She says, "Eat what you want, add what you need," and I loved that. So, like, let's say you want crackers, but obviously we've all learned that crackers are bad, quote unquote, bad for us. So you put crackers on a plate and you add what you need, which is going to be veggies or fruit or protein or whatever it be. And you sort of make that the whole meal, rather than just having snacks and then feeling bad and then feeling unsatisfied and not full.
Right.
Add whatever, or she would make like a taco bowl, like a healthy taco bowl, and add some Doritos on the side because that's what she wanted.
Mm,
So I love that. And I take that with me for sure, because I love all food and I allow myself to eat all food, but I know what my body also thrives on. So I will have like I love bread. So I buy sourdough bread because it's fermented and it's good for your gut. But it's still a carb. And so I add what I need. I'll add some almond butter on top, and I'll make some eggs on the side. So it's like eat what you want, add what you need, and I love that.
that's such a great recommendation and idea. I love
Yeah,
that too.
it's such a good one.
Because then at least you're making sure that you don't just have like like four pieces of bread. I could eat four pieces of bread just plain, but now you've made it,
Totally.
a whole meal and a healthy meal by adding those necessities. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and sometimes that also helps with like the binge mentality, because eating 4 pieces of bread then leads to eating a sleeve of cookies, then leads to eating XX, whatever. And a lot of the time, obviously binging is emotional, but you're not satisfying whatever that craving was. So if you want to have bread, just have bread from the get-go, rather than having a protein bar and a yogurt and a smoothie and then having the
Yep.
bread. We've all done it. Have the bread, and then also add the things that are going to keep you full and satisfied, and then move on. And know that food is food and it's delicious and it's meant to be enjoyed, but it's also fuel. And and we're good.
Yeah.
And I have to just remind myself, like, we're good.
Hmm.
We're all good.
Going back to body image, body stuff. How have you been able to handle kind of the way our bodies change as we age? I think all of us kind of got probably focused in our bodies when we were in high school. And your high school body looks really different than your 20 something body, which looks really different than
Yeah.
your 30 something body. And it keeps evolving. So, how have you been able to kind of manage the size changes, the skin changes, all of those changes that come along with just the natural process of aging?
I think a big thing is um, sort of accepting that that's aging and you can't change it. And I know there's aesthetic treatments and there's Botox and there's this and there's that. But like down to our core, we all are changing. We all are aging. Our hips are all getting wider. And I just think it's part of life. And until we're okay with that, then we're always going to be looking for how to change, how to be different, how to look quote unquote better. Also, a big thing for me is buying clothing that fits you rather than fitting into clothing. And I have really let go of forcing myself to wear the jeans that my friends are wearing and the shirts that my friends are wearing. And I'm finding clothing brands that fit me and I feel so good in, so I can show up in my jeans and not feel like I'm a sausage being squished into a little casing because I should be wearing this size or this style.
Mm-hmm.
So literally when I found Abercrombie Curve Love jeans, my life changed. I swear to God, my body image increased. My like my positive body image increased. Because it was finally like a pair of jeans that fit me in all the right places. And you can just leave the house feeling confident. When you're in an outfit that you feel confident in, you cannot tell me that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have a terrible day. You
Yeah.
just can't.
Abercrombie's really done a 180. They're
A
crushing it.
180.
I love going in
Oof.
there.
I always love. I always make jokes. I'm like, they caused me so much childhood trauma, but they really
They're
did.
making up
They
for
did.
it.
They made
They're
up for it
trying.
because I will only, yeah,
Yeah.
I only wear Abercrombie Curve Love, and they're the best. So yeah,
I
they
love
win.
that. Um,
Yeah.
and you're so right. I think even, so many of us, when we're even buying clothes, you put that pair of jeans on, you're like, oh, they're a little snug, but like, oh, maybe I'll fit into them if I like go to the gym extra hard this week. And it's almost like you buy these clothes that are aspirational that do not fit you right now. And it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I do that often. It's like, stop.
I did it last year. Don't worry. I bought a pair of these really stunning cargo pants, and I was like, okay, if I literally lost 1 pound, these would fit better. And they still don't fit me, and I still have them, and the tag's still on. And I'm like, you're an
Yeah.
idiot.
I feel like also it's so funny. I've seen it so much on Instagram, like jokes about wearing your standing jeans versus your sitting jeans. And like we all actually have jeans that we cannot
Yes.
sit down in. Like they're physically too small to bend at the waist. Like what are we doing?
You know when you can wear them and
Yeah.
when you can't. Like your Christmas jeans
Oh yeah.
versus like your date jeans. Like they're
They're
all
all
different
different.
things.
Yeah, all of different purposes.
So
Um
see, like it's crazy that we do that to ourselves versus just having a
yeah,
comfortable pair of black jeans and blue jeans and like
that we
why do
could
we do
sit
that
or
to
stand
ourselves?
in. That would be
Yeah.
wise. Yeah. Have you ever struggled to like let go of a pair of jeans or like something that you've been holding on to from when you were smaller that you're like, one day I might fit back into
Oh
this?
yeah.
What do you have in terms of advice for anyone who might still have like this small pair of pants in their closet that they're like, oh, if I just lost 10 pounds?
I have them. I actually have two pairs. So when I started recovery, I was like, I'm not getting rid of any of my old clothes because they're kind of new clothes. Like I only really had a 2.5 year spread of time where I was like skinny. And so I was like, I spent money on this. I will eventually fit back into it. This was like my sad stage of recovery. I was like, this isn't happening. And then I realized that half my closet or majority of my closet was clothing that didn't fit me anymore. So I did a big purge of all of that clothing. but I kept two pairs of jeans that I still have that I honestly couldn't tell you I could ever get rid of. Like they bring back good memories because one was like my first pair of 100% cotton Levi's that would never fit me ever again. Literally will never fit me ever again. But like maybe one day my daughter can have them because they're just so perfect. And another pair of jeans too that I just think are gorgeous. And do I look at them sometimes and like get a little sad? Yeah, of course, because I like still have pictures of me wearing them. But I also remember that like what I just said. Why would I ever do that to myself? I know what it takes to get back to that body. It takes a lot of mental sadness, and I will never do that to myself. But it's just it's hard to let go, and it was like so many good memories, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So to the person who has a closet full of clothing that doesn't fit you anymore, all I can say is if you look at that, first of all, it's taking up so much space that you can free up and buy new clothing. But if you look at that every day and you're hopeful for a different body or you're hopeful for a different you or it makes you sad, think about how good it would feel to put that all in garbage bags and give it to your friends or donate it or just start fresh. You don't need to start fresh with $1,000 worth of new clothing because I know people say, well, I don't want to buy new clothing because I don't want to spend money. You could buy one new pair of jeans and two new shirts, and that could be the start of your new fresh closet. And you don't even know like the mental um load that will get taken off of you the second you get rid of that clothing. And keeping one or two things like fine, because if I said get rid of it, I'd be a hypocrite, like I just said. But I really do think like it just feels so much better to not have all that reminder all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, there's such an emotional attachment somehow to these things that it's just I think for a lot of us it's just built in and baked in because we learned so much about
Totally.
like the value of a small body and it's like holding on hope to that value and that kind of way of being or size. Ugh, it's so silly. Um
Yeah. It's like getting rid of a portion of the old you,
mhm.
but the old you is not gone. It's still inside of you. It's just you're growing into a better version of you. So the better version of you deserves to have clothing that fits that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what other kind practices when it comes to body now instead of food? Are there any tips and tricks when maybe someone's having like a negative day when they look in the mirror, they're feeling kind of crappy? Do you have any kind of like words of affirmation that you say to yourself or anything like that to make someone feel a little bit more comfortable in their skin?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like I never got into words of affirmation or like journaling. I just don't know why. I'm so woo woo, if you couldn't tell already from this episode. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely do talk to myself, which I guess could be considered words of affirmation, like I said in the car. But on a down day, like the worst thing you can do is stand in front of the mirror and just like mope and dwell on the fact that you aren't happy with the way that you look right now. So I would say you need to get up and get out of the house. There is nothing that makes anybody feel better than a walk outside. Um, Go do something that makes you happy. Go get your favorite coffee at a coffee shop. Just like there, do not spend time on your phone looking at old pictures or looking at people online who you think look better than you. That is like the entry to the black hole, and we don't want to enter the black hole because we've all been there. So I would just say, like, get out. And that's like my thing, like, get up, get out. And that's how I like to start the day. Otherwise, it's just not that great. And when you get out, you see people and you get to connect and you just get out of your head. And that's the most important thing is getting out of your head because we can make ourselves crazy and we're always our worst critics and we know it, but we still do it. So definitely just like, you know, get up and get
Yeah.
out.
So you're in LA
Yeah.
now. You're an LA girly these days. What are like
Yes.
the LA spots, restaurants, classes? Like what are you doing while you're out there for wellness?
Oh, I just love it here. There is so much. First of all, the
Oh my
weather,
god, I
like as I said,
know.
I live in Toronto. So, like when I say get up, get out, it's because I can get up and get out. But my mom is at home in the snow, being like, "Oh, it's so." um, I don't know. There's so many things. There's so many amazing workout classes. I used to be a workout like junkie. Like I used to love a good workout class, and since COVID, I sort of fell back in love with weight training. And so at home, I have a personal trainer. But here, I joined a CrossFit gym and it's amazing and I love it. That is also something, is having a community to like ground you and make you feel warm and just like, it's a good place to land sometimes when you're having a down day.
Yeah.
Um, where else? What have I done? I don't know. I'm just going around. Erewhon is quite the spot. You know what
Yeah.
that is?
Are you getting some crazy
Yeah.
smoothies?
Oh my gosh. On Sunday, I already have it planned out. That's how crazy I am. There's this smoothie from this guy online. His name's Paul Saladino. He's like carnivore MD. Have you heard of him?
No.
He's the guy that's like, kale's bad for you and this is bad for
Okay.
you. Anyway, he made a smoothie with Erewhon. I kind of love him,
Hmm.
if I'm being honest. Some of the things. He's like very carnivore-y. And so I have to try the smoothie. It's
Oh my
$20
God.
US.
Stop. How many ounces? It better be like
I think
20
it's like a
ounces.
I think it's like a normal smoothie
Like
cup. So
8?
like,
Oh my God.
yeah, probably 8 ounces. But you know what? I'm trying to save on other things. Like I don't really get coffee out that much
Hmm.
because I have it so here. So
Sometimes it's nice to treat yourself. Honestly, I'm all for treating
exactly.
yourself, even if it's just a fun little smoothie. So now kind of in this healthier mindset, kind of through your recovery, how do you see exercise? Do you see it as, you know, a health practice for yourself? Do you see it as like this fun thing? Do you think about aesthetics at all anymore? Like where is exercise in your mind?
It's a bit of a tricky situation, just like food, just like body image. I obviously at first think about aesthetics, like a lot of us. And then I get out of my head and I'm like, wait, I love this. It makes me feel good. I've never felt better. I've never been stronger. Reminder. Yeah. I also have reminded myself that like when you're losing weight, you always hear the same quotes over again, whether it's like calories in, calories out, or
Mm.
whatever. The quote that I always used to hear was, "You can't outrun or out exercise a bad diet." I kind of use that as like a positive because I'm like, no matter how hard I work out, it won't make me lose weight because I eat a certain way. So rather than breaking my body in half, I might as well just enjoy the workout and move on, right? Like I could run on the treadmill for 2 hours, nothing's going to change. So that sort of helped me like create a really good relationship with exercise because I was like, if I'm going to eat this constant, like my eating is just constant now, my body's not going to change that much. I'm just going to gain strength or, gain flexibility, be better at X and Y and Z. So yeah, I do love the gym. I have kind of fallen back in love with like treating my body well. And weirdly, I had an epiphany a few days ago. I don't know why. It was supposed to be a rest day and then I wanted to work out. And sometimes those, like the guilt comes in on a rest day. And I was like, like what I said before about longevity. Like I only have this body, this one body, these muscles, they're always going to be the same. I'm going to have two biceps or
Mhm.
whatever. And so I had this epiphany of like, my body doesn't need to go through an extraneous exercise class every single day. It just needs to move. Like
Yeah.
my body just needs to move. My heart needs to pump blood. My lungs need to breathe. And so whether I go outside for a walk or I go to the gym, it's movement and movement is movement. So that was kind of just like I don't know what my body kind of reminded me of that. My mind reminded me of that. And it was like very freeing and liberating to just be like, it's okay if you don't make it to the gym today. It's okay if you just like do some light, leisurely movement, kind of like what you talked about with seed cycling. I mean, not seed cycling, cycle
Cycle
syncing.
syncing. Yeah, I love that. How about your relationship with food? Is it fuel? Is it fun? Is it both?
It's both. And it is so fun.
Mhm.
I feel like I have finally been like, I'm allowed to go out and enjoy. And I'm also allowed to cook at home super, super healthy ingredient meals. And I'm finding a really good balance, especially being here. It's like so exciting to be in a new city and go out for dinner and go to Erewhon Hot Bar and buy a million things. But it's also so fun to cook and go to the farmer's market and just like find love with food again. So it kind of feels like both, and I'm really happy about it. So, yeah.
In that vein of posting on social media and being an online presence, there's obviously a huge vulnerability side to that. Obviously you're posting, you're getting changed, you're showing all aspects of your life and yourself and your body. How has that been being so vulnerable online?
It's felt pretty natural and normal, honestly. Like I said at the beginning, I started this on the basis, or I continued it on the basis of me just being authentically who I am. And so the way that I show up in person is the way I show up online. And so that makes it very easy to just be who I am. I think with just like being, or like having the account, the vulnerability has just sort of like come, and I never really like planned to post half naked or like post try on hauls with my butt hanging out or post in a bikini. It just became what it was. But a big part of that is obviously feeling other people's judgment. And to that is what I have the I don't care mindset to. Because if you're going to judge me for what I do, then that's just showing that you have your own internal problems. And so it kind of just takes like being the bigger person to say whatever, and it's become my career and I make a great income from it. And so it's like sort of all encompassing in my life, and I love it so much. So I just feel like vulnerability is part of the job. It's like one of the check marks that you need to sign off on the resume. Um, and I think also you can just see right through that. If someone's not being authentic or vulnerable or whatever, then it shows. And to me, I just don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah. And I feel like people gravitate towards vulnerable, authentic people. It's almost like you build community. The Oftentimes the only way you can build community is being vulnerable and being authentic and showing things or expressing things that other people might be fearful to express or they relate to, but they would never say it themselves. And it's like you
Totally.
being that presence and showing up and saying those things and showing those things in your content is what people love about you in the first place.
Totally. And it's always like I sometimes obviously get like a creative block when I'm making content and I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to post today, or when I'm planning out some stuff. And it's always the same videos that do well because it shows authenticity. It's when I talk about body image or I talk about the past or whatever. If I'm just going to make a random off the hop video about like me at the gym, nobody really cares. And it's when I like go deeper and, really pull at the heartstrings, but resonate with
Hmm.
everyone, that it really does, show, it shows in the stats. And I think, well, it's not just a metrics game. The stats really do help a lot show what people like and what they don't. And I think that's a great
Yeah.
tool to use.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, you want to create content that resonates and that people want to watch, want to look at, want to engage with. So that totally makes sense. And I love how I think sometimes with content creators, um, you almost have this feeling that they're not going to show you kind of the deeper, darker side. It's like they're famous, they're living this great life, they're doing all these cool things, and then you know you're almost, I would assume, like incentivized not to share things that might be embarrassing or that might have shame attached to them, but actually that's what people want, that's what people want to see at the same time.
Totally. I guess there's so many different groups of people on social media, and that's the best part about it, is like one person can post their different Chanel bag every day, and that's so fun to watch. And one person can show their eating haul, and that's so fun to watch. And I can post my clothing haul and my stupid funny videos, and that's fun to watch about body image. And so that's like the best part about it, is that there's room for everyone and there's different niches for a reason. And I'm not a fashion, person, and I'm not going to New York Fashion Week, but the next person is. And so it's like you can follow whoever you want to follow and sort of dip your toes into every single niche.
Yeah, I love that. I love the internet. I feel like as many things about it that are annoying, Oh my god, to find so many communities, to find so many people you relate to, it's so awesome. Like, oh, I just love it.
Yes.
All right, as we wrap up here, if listeners could take one thing away from you from this episode, what would you want it to be?
Oof, that is a big ask. I'm so bad at these things, but I just feel like we've talked so much about like authenticity and vulnerability. And I always say whether you have an online community or you don't, because I feel like majority of people don't, just be authentically you in your life and live the life that you want to live. I've said this about your body, that you only have one body, but you also only have one life. And to live a life in the shadow or, trying to be someone you're not is not worth it. And when we're all in our 80s and 90s, hopefully we all live long and look back at our life, you're going to want to see the things that you loved versus the things that you wished people loved you for. And a reminder that nobody looks back and says, oh, she was a size 2 or a size 4 or a size 6. They say, oh, she was so funny and smart and the best person and the best friend and whatever. So I just think that's important to remember. And I'm always here for you. I always say that, but it's true. Whether you want to send me a DM or a voice note or whatever, I try and answer all my DMs. And so I'm always here as just like a resource and a friend and
I love
whatever.
that. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch or learn more?
You can find me. I'm on Instagram and TikTok, the same handle at Raquel Benitah, which is just my full name. And I would love to have you.
Awesome. Raquel, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the solo moment of today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. I think it was a little bit of a heavier episode getting into some of the stuff that I know many people struggled with growing up or are currently struggling with at this time. I know this topic is a little bit tricky because it is so sensitive, and I think it's so emotional to think about how much the media and social media is still impacting people today when it comes to their definition of beauty, their self image, and their self worth. So I just wanted to spend some time unpacking that and mainly just offering some reassurance that, we talked so much about all the imagery that we were shown growing up, all the magazines, all the models. And if you didn't come out of that with a perfect, healthy self image, that makes sense. That would have been really rare and really amazing to do in spite of what we were shown and what we were exposed to. So, I wanted to offer those words because I think sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves, being angry that we feel this way or angry that we don't love ourselves more or don't have the confidence we wish we had. And I think so much of it is being a product of this society, unfortunately. And it really didn't paint this picture that was inclusive and diverse and really only celebrated one type of beauty, which would be, again, rare if you fit because it was so, so narrow. I think back to being in high school, and I would have given anything to have blonde hair and blue eyes, even though that would look insane on me. But that was how powerful those images were. Like, I didn't want to look like myself. I hated my freckles. I hated my hair color. There were so many things that when we look inward, we want to change. And if you get to a point in your life where you do come around to love those things about your body or your looks, um, that is so worth celebrating. And it is absolutely a journey that I think everyone is on in their own time. Raquel does a really interesting series on her TikTok and her Instagram where she'll say, why did we all grow up feeling so negative about ourselves? And then it's just clip after clip after clip of all these moments in media and television where they were hammering home this kind of awful perception of beauty ideals or the size that we should be. And so I think we can be really hard on ourselves when there's a lot about the way we think and about the way we've processed beauty that was not within our control. And it's so wonderful to see, these great campaigns from Aerie, or, rules around not airbrushing models anymore, or at least noting when they are airbrushed photos or edited photos. And I think that's such a great step. But unfortunately, when it's coupled with, massive access to things like Facetune or, body manipulator apps, we've made looking unattainable really accessible, meaning everyone can now make themselves look like the most beautiful version of them that is completely flawless, poreless, skinny, whatever you want. And we've given everyone that access to show that online as if it's real, and it's not real. So, if I can leave you with any words today, loving yourself is a journey you probably didn't want to go on, but are kind of forced to go on based on how we grew up. Nothing online is real, and trust that everyone is beautiful in their own way. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.